Earlier today, a U.S. carrier strike group transiting the Strait of Hormuz was approached by 8 fast-moving small craft displaying aggressive and coordinated maneuvering patterns.
Commanders followed established rules of engagement, which require clear indicators of hostile intent before escalation.
The first warning did not come with an explosion. It came as 8 fast-moving blips slicing across the dark water of the Strait of Hormuz, closing hard on the USS Abraham Lincoln, while watch teams on the carrier tracked them through spray, heat shimmer, and rising radio tension. The gap was shrinking by the minute. These were not drifting civilian boats. They were small, fast, and aggressive, coming in from multiple angles with the kind of movement that forces every commander to ask the same question at the same time. Is this harassment, or is this the start of something much worse? 7 minutes is enough time to launch a response. It is also just enough time to lose control of the entire situation. The Strait of Hormuz is one of those places where geography creates pressure before anyone ever fires a shot. Commercial tankers, naval escorts, patrol craft, and surveillance platforms all move through a cramped stretch of water where there is almost no room for error. Every change in course means something. Every radar return gets judged twice. Every fast boat is treated like a possible threat until it proves otherwise. On this day, the USS Abraham Lincoln was moving through one of the most politically charged waterways on Earth, under constant Iranian observation and under the shadow of a simple reality. Even a small clash in these waters can hit oil markets, rattle allied governments, and reach military command centers within minutes. Around the carrier, escort ships held formation, sensors were active, helicopters were available, and weapons crews were already living in that uneasy space between routine vigilance and imminent danger. Then the pattern changed. 8 Iranian speedboats broke from the clutter on the water and started pushing toward the strike group. Not casually, not like fishermen passing through. They were closing with intent, spreading their angles, testing the outer edge of the defensive envelope, moving fast enough to crush decision time, and close enough to raise the possibility of rockets, machine gun fire, or a swarming interference attempt near one of the most important warships in the U.S. Navy. That is exactly why moments like this matter so much. A carrier is not just a ship, it is a floating airfield, a command center, a political signal, and a promise that American power can arrive without asking anyone for permission. When a ship like the Abraham Lincoln enters Hormuz, every player in the region reads the move differently. When allies see reassurance, rivals see pressure, militias see symbolism, Tehran sees opportunity, risk, and leverage all at once. And that is why small boats matter in a place like this. They are cheap, fast, hard to identify, at distance, and perfectly built for gray zone confrontation. A swarm does not need to sink a carrier to score a strategic win. It only needs to force hesitation, trigger a mistake, damage an escort, or create footage that makes a superpower look vulnerable in one of the most sensitive maritime choke points on Earth. In Hormuz, perception can travel faster than missiles. A few minutes of confusion can reshape deterrence. A weak response invites more pressure. A reckless one can ignite a crisis no one can control once it starts rolling. Iran's fast attack and fast inshore tactics were built for exactly this kind of arena: small profiles, high speed, converging movement, multiple directions, constant ambiguity. One speedboat can harass, 8 can complicate everything. At range, boats like these are hard to read clearly. Sea clutter distorts radar returns. Civilian traffic muddies identification. Hull-mounted weapons can remain visually unclear until the boats are already much too close. And if explosives are involved, the danger sharpens immediately. In a narrow waterway, a boat pushing more than 40 knots does not need much time to become a collision threat, a firing platform, or a suicide vessel. The danger was not just in their presence, it was in the way they moved. Two pushed wide, forcing escort sensors to stretch, and three stayed tighter in the center lane, challenging the line that would normally trigger stronger warnings. The remaining boats staggered behind them in a formation that could either be intimidation theater or a deliberate attempt to overload the response sequence and expose hesitation in American decision-making. No one on the Lincoln had the luxury of assuming it was theater. The number that mattered was 7 minutes. That was the estimated window before the lead boats reached a distance where visual signals, radio warnings, and deterrent maneuvering might no longer be enough to keep the situation under control. In open water, commanders can sometimes buy time with distance. In Hormuz, time disappears faster because space is limited, angles are tighter, and neutral shipping can complicate both lines of fire and room to maneuver. Every decision inside that window carried consequences. Fire too early, and Washington may wake up to a regional crisis driven by footage of burning boats. Wait too long, and a swarm can push inside the protective bubble where even a minor impact, a near collision, or a burst of deck-level fire turns into both a tactical emergency and a strategic embarrassment. Rules of engagement do not remove pressure. They compress it. The watch team had to establish hostile intent, stay proportional, protect the carrier, avoid civilian spillover, and remain alert to the possibility that these boats might only be the front edge of something larger. 7 minutes sounds manageable on paper. At sea, with 8 contacts closing, it evaporates. The American response began the way professional militaries survive dangerous ambiguity. They stacked options fast. Bridge crews altered posture. Escorts adjusted separation. Warning circuits lit up. Radios pushed repeated instructions in maritime English and regionally familiar challenge formats. Signal teams made the warning visible and unmistakable. On the carrier and nearby escorts, gunners manned .50 caliber mounts and larger remote systems, not because the Americans wanted a firefight, but because visible readiness can sometimes stop one before it starts. It did not stop this one. The order moved up and down the chain with brutal speed. Air cover, immediate launch, maintain escalation control. An AH-64 Apache, operating from a nearby forward-capable platform in support of maritime security operations, was brought into the fight as a timing solution. Fixed-wing aircraft could dominate a battlefield, but for a close, fast, low-altitude intercept over crowded water, the Apache offered something more valuable in the next few minutes: rapid response, precise observation, and the ability to impose control on small maneuvering targets without the massive escalation signature of a full strike package. Rotor blades were already turning before the surface picture fully stabilized. The launch was not dramatic. It was procedural, sharp, and driven by rehearsed urgency. An Apache over water changes the psychology of a small boat encounter almost instantly. From above, speedboats lose some of their masking advantage. Their headings become easier to read. Their spacing becomes obvious. Their intent becomes harder to hide. The helicopter can pace them, warn them, designate them, and if necessary, engage them with far more precision than a surface ship trying to sort out sea clutter and crossing traffic at deck level. And in this scenario, the real power of the Apache was not just firepower, it was control. Its sensors could tell the difference between a boat holding course and a boat setting up for a dangerous run. Its cannon, rockets, and targeting systems gave commanders a layered response ladder. The 30-millimeter chain gun was ideal for disabling or destroying a small craft with controlled bursts. Even without firing, the aircraft's presence forced the Iranian crews to face a simple fact. They were now under immediate visible armed overwatch. At the same time, the surface force stayed disciplined. Ships do not want to fire across crowded shipping lanes unless there is no other option. Helicopter dominance created room for the escorts to keep maneuvering, keep warning, and keep the carrier protected while preserving a cleaner engagement picture. By the time the Apache arrived overhead, the lead boats had already crossed deep into the danger zone. Spray kicked off their bows in white sheets as they surged over choppy water, engines screaming, hulls slamming hard enough to throw mist into the rotor wash above them. The helicopter came in low enough to be seen and high enough to dominate, banking across the formation and forcing every crew below to recalculate. Warning passes were made, calls were repeated, the formation did not fully break. That was the moment the encounter tipped from intimidation to crisis. One boat kept driving forward, another shifted outward, trying to widen the geometry and split attention. A third appeared to slow briefly, then accelerated again as if waiting for a coordinated push. From the deck of an American warship, movement like that does not read as confusion, it reads as preparation. The Apache crew did not guess. They identified priorities. The first target was the most aggressive lead craft, the boat closing fastest on the protective envelope around the strike group. A short 30-millimeter burst hit ahead and across its path, a final violent warning written directly onto the water. The boat kept coming. The second burst struck home, tearing into the bow and throwing up flame, spray, and fragments in a tight rolling blast. The craft slewed sideways, lost speed instantly, and disappeared into a spreading cloud of smoke and debris. Everything changed after that. The illusion of risk-free pressure vanished. Two boats broke hard away. Another cut throttle and yawed broadside in the wake, but not all of them disengaged. At least two still maneuvered inside the outer warning envelope, gambling that the Americans would hesitate after the first kill. They were wrong. The Apache pivoted, tracked, and fired again, this time walking controlled cannon fire across the waterline of a second craft trying to reposition. The rounds tore through the hull, and the boat rolled violently before settling low. An escort ship amplified the pressure with sirens, radio commands, and trained weapons, while the remaining Iranian boats finally lost their cohesion. What had looked dangerous on the way in now looked exposed on the way out. Another burst landed close enough to a third boat to drench it in spray and shock its crew into breaking off completely. The rest turned away in jagged, uneven arcs, racing back toward safer distance, their swarm tactic shattered by speed, precision, and the refusal of the U.S. force to give up the initiative. The entire violent exchange lasted only minutes. That is how these moments work. Long tension, short chaos, permanent consequences. The immediate result was simple. The carrier remained untouched. The strike group held formation. The fast boat rush failed. But the real aftermath ran deeper than the damaged hulls left behind on the water. Iran had tested the edge of American reaction time near one of the most sensitive maritime corridors in the world and found a force that was neither reckless nor passive. The U.S. response was fast enough to stop the approach, controlled enough to remain inside a defensible military logic, and visible enough to send a message to every observer tracking the incident from coastal stations, patrol craft, intelligence screens, and foreign ministries. There were still risks after the shooting stopped. Wreckage in contested waters can become propaganda. Surviving crews can become talking points. Each side can shape the story for its own audience. But one operational truth remained impossible to hide. A swarm had approached a carrier strike group, pushed too far, and been broken before it could force a concession. For sailors on watch, the lesson was immediate and personal. Training mattered, timing mattered, composure mattered. In compressed crises, the side that organizes its decisions faster often wins before the fight fully begins. And that is why this was never just about 8 boats. It was about The future of deterrence in crowded, contested waterways where cheap platforms try to challenge expensive ones, where ambiguity itself becomes a weapon, and where seconds matter more than speeches. Iran's maritime pressure strategy depends on operating in the seam between peace and open war. Fast boats, drones, mines, coastal missiles, and harassment patrols all serve the same purpose: create hesitation, impose risk, show that even a superpower must think twice inside Tehran's neighborhood. The American answer in this kind of environment cannot rely on size alone. A carrier is powerful, but power that reacts slowly invites testing. What protected the Lincoln in this scenario was integration. Surface watch teams, escort maneuver, air response, weapons discipline, and command clarity all fused inside a shrinking time window. That is the deeper signal here. Modern naval deterrence is no longer just about who has the biggest ship or the longest strike range. It is about who can see first, decide first, and apply force with enough speed and precision to break the other side's plan before it fully forms. In Hormuz, every close call teaches both sides something. Iran learns where pressure works and where it fails. The United States learns how quickly gray zone theater can turn lethal. And the next encounter may come with drones overhead, missiles on standby, cyber disruption in the background, or commercial shipping is trapped in the middle. In the Strait of Hormuz, major crises do not always announce themselves with fleets and missile trails. Sometimes they arrive as 8 small boats racing low across the water, betting that speed, confusion, and nerve can humiliate a carrier before anyone can stop them. This time, that bet collapsed in 7 minutes. The Abraham Lincoln stayed on course, the swarm broke apart, and the message was unmistakable. In one of the most dangerous waterways on Earth, the side that controls the clock controls the fight.